Now, the science is growing and developing faster than industry can keep up. And so, yeah, I have gone down that rabbit hole, and it's fascinating. There's some mycelium rabbit holes, there's biochar and graphene rabbit holes. It's one of those things that as it's going to make its way into the marketplace, we have to crawl, then walk, then run, and then talk about the Olympics. Now, the Olympics are just exciting, and so everybody's Olympics, Olympics, Olympics.
Hey guys, it's Mandi with Global Hemp Association. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I'm excited about the opportunity to build a relationship and connect this supply chain. I mean, after all, that's why we started the association. Our association was built on the foundation of connecting supply chain, building relationships, and helping you grow your business. Anyone from farmers, manufacturers, and distributors, people that are passionate about the supply chain, and those creating products selling into biofuels, plastics, textiles, construction, and building materials. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm glad to be back. I haven't been on here for a little while, so I'm really excited to see everybody. I hope that as you log on, please let us know that you're here. Say hello. Ray's a rock star and has a ton of information to share, so please drop questions. You can pay me for that later, Ray. I saw you smile. Anyways, thank you very much for joining. If you haven't tuned in before, please make sure that you hit the little bell at the top on LinkedIn to remind yourself about these events that are coming up and for future presentations or future interviews that we're going to host. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because Ray and I were just talking. There's a lot of content on there, and I'd love for you guys to be able to view it and go back and watch it later on. But without further ado, Ray, tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's introduce you, and what do you have going on, and what brought you into this industry?
Yeah, thanks. And if anybody's a rock star, it's you. So I sure appreciate you having me on, and I enjoy the opportunity to collaborate and share the story, because sharing the story about the industry and its many different uses is the most important thing. And so all of the content that gets pushed out there can be found in that body of knowledge by whoever is looking for whatever niche within a niche that they're looking for. And ours is the building and construction. And so a little bit about me and how I got into that is that my background is a real estate broker and investor. And so I'm more of the mentality of not so much buy and sell real estate, but buy and hold it as long-term investment. And so that led me to always be researching what would last longer, what would perform better, and then and do these. And now in a previous lifetime, I owned and ran a regional recycling facility. So if somebody would cut down a tree or trim a tree, we would grind it up, make mulch, compost, things like that. And so I always enjoyed that part of the industry. And if there's a pile of anything anywhere, I want to know what it is. And so, these large feedstocks, like if you're driving around, different areas, like say for around Houston, and they've got all the rice fields there, there's a mountain of rice holes. I've dealt in rice holes and things like that. And so I've always enjoyed following different industries and what they do and how they connect and their waste streams and how you can produce out of those. And then when I saw the Farm Bill in 2018 come down the pike, I knew that was a big deal. I didn't know what would come out of it, but I knew it was a big deal. And then, it's like we just discovered trees. And so, what can you do with a tree? And so then I started, like everybody else on YouTube, looking at things. It's like, oh, wow, there's building materials. And then it's like, oh, wow, there's it doesn't burn. And, all these other things. And so, further down the rabbit hole I go. And then it's like, this would be great for the houses that I'm building for investments because it lasts longer. It's a healthy environment. We're building for affordable homes. And so a lot of times if somebody's renting a property, they get what's bandaged together to where it just holds up enough to collect rent. And sometimes it's full of mold. And so this would be something that's a real healthy environment. and I really like that. And then I like that it would be long lasting, and as far as like holding it, and then just the plaster on the exterior surfaces, not needing paint, and then lasting, you know, the foreseeable future is something that's very appealing. And so that led me into the space. Now, if anybody comes this far down the rabbit hole and they say, yes, I want that, now it's a pain in the neck. And so, getting it to where, hey, I want it on a construction site. What would that look like? What would that take? Not just a one-off, a she shed or a grand home, but if we've really got to drill the numbers, then that's what it took. And so I've explored that, and then I've got a project permitted here in San Antonio that we're going to be building starting over the next few weeks, and then we'll be doing that. And so, but it's still a pain in the neck at best. And so that led me to parallel the investment focus with the fund that we have, the Triple P fund, and then that's more just a math equation. That's a dollar earning a dollar. And then now the Hemp Build Network is what we put together to facilitate building with hemp. So my mantra is the money is in the money. Building a house with hemp is just something for money to do. And the network makes it possible. So that's me. I'm from Texas. I live in Virginia. Got 4 kids and a wife, and love just innovating and being an entrepreneur and all the things that make things fun and challenging, or sometimes fun. We were talking about, there are some days where it's like, golly, what else can we do? But then you get a breakthrough and it's all fun in doing that. So that's me.
Okay. I've seen a lot of people chime in. Hi, Joanne, and hi, Kayla. Kayla just chimed in backstage, so maybe if she wants to jump on later, I'd love to introduce her and say hello as well. But okay, so I want to hear a little bit about this project in San Antonio. Tell me a little bit. What is it? How's it going? Yeah. What are the challenges?
Yeah, and Amos Lozano is he's rebranding the famous Amos to the famous juice company, and an excellent young entrepreneur. He's very exciting, very driven. He motivates me. It's like, it's like, how would Amos do this? He's got a lot of energy, a lot of drive. It's very professional, and he's got a couple of different businesses. And so the famous juice company is, he's going to be having different locations to where you can have that healthy juice alternative, or whatever they're offering on their menu. It's very healthy, and I've tried some of it. It's great. But having it built utilizing hemp is one of the things that really goes with his brand and his story. And so it's not so much about, yes, he wants a quality construction project, but yes, he wants a good branding story as well. And he wants to advocate. He's a whole plant advocate. And so, that's one of the things that it's very important to him, is to be able to say, this is hemp. And so he's got a lot of good media that's out there talking about that and on that topic. And he's, the first one in the area that's, he's got the bravery that includes a pen on a check. And so he's paying for the small portable building. Now, we didn't have to jump through, because of its size, we didn't have to jump through the hoops of, building permits and things like that, but it allowed me to open the door and get that process going to where the house that we're building is a fully permitted structure. And so, it allowed the time to get that going. And so that's Amos. That's the project. We're finished. It's just February now, 2022, and we've just finished casting the hemp in place. And so now it'll take several weeks to cure. And so towards the end of February, beginning of March, we'll be putting the plaster coating, which is the interior and exterior sheathing. And so it has to cure and dry. And so, everything's underway and exciting. And he's in a courtyard area where they normally have like the food trucks, the taco truck, the food trailer. And then his is going to be a portable building on skids. And so that's a prototype. And then we're looking at other projects up and down the the 35 corridor and then out towards Houston as well. He's just going to start in San Antonio and work out. And that's that project. We've had a lot of excitement around it. And then I just put out the old Tom Sawyer painting the fence type of mentality and said, hey, if you want to come learn, then, and, you know, it's very humbling. There's a lot of excitement in the industry. I had people flying in to work, and I'm like, man, I'm Tom Sawyer on steroids. And then it was like, there's a passion in the, yeah, it's more credit to the passion in the industry than it is to my Tom Sawyering ability. But you know, there's an excitement out there, and it's there's a lot of people that are you know, both in the professional trades like engineers and architects, and then folks that want to become subcontractors and stuff like that as well. There's a lot of excitement.
Okay, so are you finding that the majority of the pull for the growth or push for the growth of the hempcrete is coming from that consumer looking for a story?
It's yes to all. Anybody who hears the story, and you got to tailor the story to them. Like if you're talking to the end consumer, you're going to talk about this is a healthy home. It feel, you know, you've got a clean living environment. There's not going to be mold. It's, you know, if you're talking to a you know, like my background, I liked it that it was long lasting and efficient because I plan on having a solar component to the houses, and then I can monetize that through a more efficient home. So efficiency is money in my pocket every month. And so now, like if I'm going to be occupying it, health does. So if you tailor the story to the audience, everybody clicks yes, and everybody.
Well, and that's what's exciting. Hemp hits all of those, right? It's sustainable, it's economical, it's regenerative, it's all of these new pieces that previously haven't been in one product. It's either sustainable or profitable, and now it seems to be both.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that's really exciting is when you show the construction capabilities and then you go all the way, I know you do a lot with the farming and the genetic side of it as well. But if you talk to somebody who's a leader in a local municipality or a state and local government, and then you say, demand from this will equal, you know, a new industry, you know, and that abandoned warehouse building over there could be the processing facility. And then you've got a farm community that can put this into a rotation. And so it's jobs, it's economic growth, and they're like, give me more of that. And so, like I said, you've really got to tailor the story to the ears that are hearing it, and then everybody who hears it, you know, they're clicking yes, give me more. And so that's what's really exciting, because I'm getting invited on, you know, a lot of different programs like this, going to speak. You know, the next 1 to 3 years, telling the story is the biggest task, and so you do a great job at that.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to have you on. There's lots of comments coming in, and I've got all kinds of questions as you went over some of your stuff that you're doing. But Raphael made a comment right here. This is great work that you're doing with hemp. His company will love to collaborate to bring natural-based solutions and incorporate hempcrete into design. His company works with sustainable construction. So bioautonomy.com. So yeah, absolutely. It's a great. Well, and let me ask you this, right? There's been a lot of question in the scalability of hempcrete and scalability of being able to use hemp, right? What are some of the questions, and I want to kind of preface this, that you're working on a smaller design home, but ultimately the goal is to be in single family homes? Tell me where you're planning to be compared to what you're actually doing. And then what does that look like for growth and development for scale?
Yeah, everything comes under the umbrella of what I entitle a pathway to production. And so we don't get, as, you know, by we, I mean mankind, you know, in occupying this space on Earth, we don't get the you know, the environmental benefit, you know, the ecological and economical. We don't get all that unless we scale to production. And then that can mean a variety of different things. You know, that'll be textiles, that'll be a lot of different industries, like the automotive industry, using it for panels and plastics and different things like that. But the construction side specifically, we don't get all that good carbon sequestration love that we want unless we're using the production builders. Now, that has to be the end in mind. And so what we have to do is do the small part now, starting with, a building the size of Amos's, and then a building the size of the single family house that I'm building. And then I'll be building many of those. And then, each and every building, we're going to be like, well, hey, I'm not going to do it this way again, or I'm going to do, innovation is going to come and pour to where every pain in the neck that you encounter, every headache has an Advil. And so that's one of the things that repetition will do it. And I see a lot of these projects where they're very big and grand, and they can just absorb a lot of cost and a lot of effort. I want projects that cannot have those tolerances. And so I have that tolerance now, but I'm building it so that I don't. And so, because my gut is that it's not only going to win, but it's going to win by a margin. And like right now, just to tie or come close is a win, because people are going to want it more. And then, going into real estate development and production builders, if this were a Disney movie, they're the villain usually. And so we're going to have to, have Darth Vader come back to be Anakin Skywalker. And then that's going to take, a turn. And so what I know about real estate development is the developer dictates the development. And then they're in the business of selling a product, and then they're going to sell whatever product they think the market wants. And so if the market, if you go to a developer and you say, hey, I've got 100,000 names that have clicked that say they want this at the comparative price or even a 10% premium in this market area, and they're going to buy within the next 1 to 3 years. Now you've got their attention. If you don't have that, you don't. And then so they're, if they think the market wants, swimming pool and tennis courts, that's what they're going to get. If they think the market wants a community garden and sustainable building practices, that's what they're going to put. They're going to give the market what the market wants. They're just a business. It's nothing personal.
Okay, so I want to go back to some questions really quick before we dive back in. But this is really interesting, being that I'm now in the gutter business. I want to make a comment that this is exactly why we're doing this type of education, is to bridge this gap from those that are not in our industry and working with hemp and the value. And so I want to give a shout out. I don't know who this is because it shows up as Facebook user, but thank you very much for joining us. You speak of mold, and that is a big issue in our climate up in Washington State. We need to come and clean out gutters every year. And so can you speak real quick to the mold specific and what we're seeing in the benefits to the hempcrete and to using hemp in building materials?
Yeah, and then, and I've worked with gutters quite a bit in the past, and I've seen a lot of failure due to, typical deferred maintenance, like if they need to clean it every year and they don't, or if you've got like two converging fields on a roof, and it looks beautiful from the curb, but you've created a funnel, and that's a lot to ask out of a gutter. So there's a lot of design problems that ask too much out of a gutter system, and so that those are some of the problems. Now, the real rock star in why this is mold. And I don't say proof, but it's highly mold resistant. And, I double dog dare you to get mold to grow on it. You would have to add dust to it to have an organic matter there. But the lime and its pH is what keeps mold from growing on it. And so if you've got in environments like, I've talked to a lot of folks down in Louisiana where they do have flooding, they do have
moisture.
Old Testament humidity, and it's oppressive. And so, if you've got that kind of humidity, and then you can have a wall system that dissipates it without molding, then that's a good thing. And so, but to answer the question, a lot of those things are designed. But as far as it relates to hempcrete specifically, it's the lime and its pH.
Awesome. Thank you for touching on that, because that's a question that comes up a lot, and understanding where the benefit is in what product, because we see mold grow in our retted stalks, right, if we're not careful. And so that's definitely
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So another question, and for those of you that missed Josh's interview last week, it was incredible. We've had tons of outreach and tons of feedback. So if you haven't seen it, log on to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can also see this recording again. But how thick are you making these walls? And are you using 2x6 framing or double framed?
There's a lot of different techniques and styles to do it. And then what I have chosen is a 10-inch wall where I encapsulate the 2x4 studs. And so, you can have like a double frame wall. You can just imagine the expense of that. You can have it where you alternate and stagger the studs to where, every other stud is on the inside and every other stud is on the outside. It depends on your installation method. Of it all. And so what I've done is designed it to where it can be either cast in place or mechanically applied with a spray machine, and it doesn't, and it's not detrimental to either way as far as production goes. Because the mechanical applications are still coming online. I think there are a lot of them that are good. But I like encapsulating that stud, and it's either 2x6 or 2x4. And I run chases for electric and plumbing instead of encapsulating it in the hempcrete myself. Now, those are just preferences. And again, my viewpoint is that of somebody who's going to own this thing for a long time. I want my grandkids to be getting rent checks out of these houses, and I want to provide a good, healthy, and good environment for folks to live. And so the thickness I've got at 10-inch. Now that's in San Antonio. That'll get you R2 per inch. And then, so an R20 wall is good. Once you go over a foot thick, you've got a diminishing benefit to it all, and I've got it thicker in the attics. Okay,
that's good to know. When you talk about the R factor, can you explain kind of what you're looking at comparatively in the industry? What is, for insulative factor, what is standard and comparative?
Well, the main thing as far as like depending on the material and the size and the windows, they're going to do something similar to like a res check to where the folks that design the HVAC system are going to look at how many windows do you have, what type of floor area, they're going to design it specifically for that. And then they're going to want to see these certain specifications in the wall. And then they're used to dealing with something that's got an R designation, an R value, whether it's fiberglass insulation, blown cellulose or spray foam or any of the products that are standard in, and now hemp wool is coming in as well. And so it just needs to have an R value. And to establish that R value, you need to just have a test and have that testing done to where you can say, hey, this laboratory says it's an R2 per inch, not me. And then there's also a lot that's been done in Europe with the U values. A lot that's been done in the technology of the straw bale construction to where you can extrapolate those U values, those European data sets into an R value. And then you also get better performance out of that. Normally, most insulation, the R value that you have, it performs less than that. And then hempcrete is one of those things that it performs much higher because you have a couple of other things working in its advantage. And then primarily it's the monolithic nature of it all. You have no air pathways through the electrical boxes that go into the wall cavity and out the window. And so when you take that, it's kind of like the difference if you're going outside and it's cold and you've got on, a nice powder jacket or you've got on a really nice sweater. You can have the nicest sweater in the world, but if the wind's blowing, you're cold. And you can have a cheap powder jacket, and if the wind's blowing, you're going, I'm okay. And so it very much similar to that.
Great analogy. I'm suspecting this is Jean, but I'm not positive. I see a LinkedIn user in here and commenting to the concern about the structural benefits and some of the design aspects and systems. And speaking to some of the designs have been really beautiful, mostly in modern or contemporary side, but some hemp also appears in the Spanish mission style. The Europeans have done some interesting designs as well. This is something that comes up, as we're speaking to the general public about what to expect with hemp. And I've been so taken back when I saw Jean's presentation in Costa Rica about the pictures and some of the designs that have already been years ago. And so can you speak a little bit to what you're seeing from builders that are using the hemp crate?
Well, the joke about me is that I'm out to make it boring first, and then we can get exciting. Because if you talk to an architect or somebody in the design, it's like, you don't have to have a flat wall. They're like, oh, it's like you just did them Play-Doh for the first time, and so they're just going crazy and everything. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I want to make it boring first. And so you are not limited by flat walls, flat roofs. I know Sergey's got he's got the dome construction down. He does that quite a bit, and he is getting efficient. He's got efficiencies because he does a lot of them. But going back to that pathway to production, the market's not ready for that. There are so many thousands of homes that are going to be built this year that are not going to have curved walls and, cantilevered this, that, and the other. It's, a pathway to production. Now, yes, it is grand fun to have all these design components in there, but just going back and heeding my warning about, if it looks good from the curb, it's got to function well, and then never sacrifice function. And that's a battle that architects and designers face. And then that's part of the conversation. And so as those elements go into, custom home will be different than a production home.
Definitely, but definitely possible. I think it speaks to, you can pretty much do and build whatever you want with it. It's just what we're looking at for pathway to market. I totally understand that. Josh just said he'd love to collaborate and connect about his company's mycelium-based composites that uses hemp herds as a dispersion phase.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, you can get overwhelmed with technology and the science. The science is growing and developing faster than industry can keep up. And so, I have gone down that rabbit hole, and it's fascinating. There's some mycelium rabbit holes. There's biochar and graphene rabbit holes. It's one of those things that as it's going to make its way into the marketplace, we have to crawl, then walk, then run, and then talk about the Olympics. Now, the Olympics are just exciting, and so everybody's Olympics. And then we got to crawl first. And so, and then it's, again, back to does this get us to a pathway to production? There's some fantastic things about 3D printing that, I know that are probably better than what I'm doing right now, but are they going to replace what I'm doing right now? I don't think so. And so I'm going to do I might not be Mr. Right, but I'm Mr. Right now. And then until it shows production wise because I tell you what, if you try to get trades to do something new, good luck. I'm creating trades to do this. And, I'm hell bent and that stubborn to say, I'll create the damn trade to do this type of project because I want the project that bad, just because I think long term it'll be that good. And so, no other builders, if you went to a builder and said, hey, nobody does this, but I want you to do it, and they'd be like, well, what else do you want? And so, it's not a viable option. There's probably a handful of subcontractors in the country that do this. And so that's one of the things that I would like to do as far as prototyping the subcontractor, and it will probably be something in addition to another trade that they do to where it's not just, the only thing. A lot of spray foam contractors will also insulate your house with blown cellulose or whatever you want to pick from the design. And so, uh, that will mature to where now that instead of having bats, blown cellulose, spray foam, now you'll have hempcrete as an option in their services. And then you might have hempcrete with mycelium as an option. And so once we get the subcontractors that are coming on and servicing, and then the new technology layers in, it's got a network to spread out, just like mycelium do.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing. And of course, this is not my background at all, so I can't speak to one or the other, but there's incredible new innovative products all the time. And I was going to ask you earlier, maybe now's a good time, but what are some of the reservations? You mentioned one right now, asking trades to change what they're doing is a slow, long process. So what are some other challenges that you've seen that we have either maybe not touched on very much or even potentially overcome? As you're bringing this to market.
Going back to what we talked about, that a lot of the folks that contact me that want to be in the trade, they're like, hey, I want to do this. They're not so much somebody who swings a hammer and wants to now do a different trade. It's something that where they're in a trade or they're in a career and then they want to pursue this because of it stirs a passion. I'll give a good example. Andrew, that was he came down. He's a hardworking guy. He comes from a hardworking field. His job was to clean up the waste from the construction job sites. He had a couple of trucks, they were running, he just saw the mountain of material that goes into the landfill and all the waste, not only in the construction, but also in the use and just the inefficiency of it. That is his passion. And he is, going to be a fantastic, prototype for somebody who is that tradesperson that's going to come in there. And then they're going to drive it, and they're going to drive through the things that are a pain in the neck because they're passionate about it. And so that's just a good example. And it'll be other things, whether it's, I see some of the key points are health, reducing waste, sequestering carbon. It might be different for a lot of folks. It checks a lot of check boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I want to give a shout out to some of the other things that you have going. You're on Clubhouse every Thursday evening. You want to talk a little bit about where people find you and what you're doing there and what's come of that?
That is humbling. Amos actually told me about Clubhouse, and then it took me. It was first coming out. It was invite only, iPhone only, and I was like, Amos, that's the cheesiest sounding thing that it took me. It took me like 2 or 3 months for him to actually just like, Ray, you just got to do it if I'm wrong or whatever. And so I set up my account, and then, there's a lot of noise on Clubhouse, but there's a lot of really good professional business conversations. And so that's the route that we take. And then we're on every Thursday, 6 Central. And then, if anybody wants to get the reminder, just text me and let me know. And then I send out the text reminders. And then now they have the replays. So just like with your broadcast, people can catch the replay if they can't tune in live. And then it has been fantastic. We go for about an hour or two, and then we want to be real wise on people's time. And then we're talking about everything about industrial hemp and building and construction. And that goes all the way from genetics and soil sciences, all the way through design and construction techniques and method, lime binder. We took a deep dive on lime binder a week ago, and it was just like you were back in school. And so, we have guests on there that we put them in the hot seat and, let people tell about projects that they're doing. It's a great way to collaborate And then it's a great way to just, have a good body of knowledge that's growing and building. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you joining in there. It's a fun time. It's been humbling. A lot of good has come out of that.
I've had so many great connections come out of it, and it's fun being on this side and or on the other side and joining in and listening to you guys. You and Jean do a great job. Sandra, I see, is on there quite a bit also, and so it's great to have you guys. Yeah, lots of good stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so
And
outside of
class,
what?
they encourage you to talk in class. They've even got a little thing where you can send notes. It's like, where was that when I was a kid? It's like, so and so's talking and so and so's talking, and then so and so and so and so and so and so's talking. It's like, I want to talk more to that person who just said something about whatever, and then you don't want to butt in, so you can go psst, psst, and you can send them a note and all that, and then then you're like, getting on an airplane to go see somebody. It's all, talking in class is fun. I miss that from when I was a kid. That should have been there.
I need to get on more. You guys are pros at Clubhouse, and I'm not. So I definitely, in fact, I think I somehow invited you to a private room or someone else to a private room on accident. And I was like, no, get out. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to pull people in and out.
Well, yeah, well, I've done that a handful of times, and I'm hosting the damn thing, and it's kind of I need to go back. That's why you need to have several moderators. So if somebody does something boneheaded or you lose your signal, the whole room doesn't die. And so yeah, and the app is always changing. So I mean, it's a really good thing. It's a really good format. It's fun, and so I've enjoyed it.
It's a great platform for people to get involved. If you need help or you're looking for a connection, holler at Ray or I or Jean, and I'll send it over, or definitely connect you to Ray. I want to give a shout out too to all of our members. For those of you that join and support GHA, thank you very, very much. It's what helps us keep going. So please get involved. And then also, we're doing a bunch of seed trials this year that we're pretty excited about, over 10 different states, 10 different varieties focused on the end market uses. So the reason I bring it up is, what do the products look like, or the specs of the herd or materials that you're using in construction look like? And I really think it leans to this need to understand what product is going to grow where at what volume, so that we can stabilize the processing and the input markets or inputs. So
yeah, it's a very necessary part of the conversation and part of the industry, and it's the most unromantic thing that you could imagine, as far as because as a builder, I need stuff that's consistent. I joke that we all need to be able to sue each other at the end of the day and show everybody that we did the best that we can, and so that means testing these things. And then, like for example, I'm talking to some folks later today about using the CBD biomass. Now, I've got low expectations on it because it grows differently than a fiber variety biomass, and so I don't think it'll work. But I do know that you can test it, and then if it tests, then it'll we'll try it. But I know what works, and I want to stick with that first, and then test the rest. And I want to test the first part too. And so, domestically, it is now available domestically in the U.S., where previously you were importing from France, or just rolling the dice with what you had. And so genetics plays a big part in that. So I'm keen on what genetics are being grown by which farmers and producers, and actually being a part of the processing. And then that's part of the construction industry that those two things don't connect. I mean, could you imagine a builder wanting to go out to the forestry guy and talk about the trees and the saplings? There's a
or the farmer listening. Yeah. Or the farmer looking at the construction guy and say, wait, you're telling me how to harvest my crop?
Oh yeah, who the hell are you? Yeah. And so it's like what the testing does, it's like a third party that doesn't have a dog in the hunt. And then that way it takes everything off of me, so that I can say, look, I tested it at this third party lab, and then it was like, okay. And then the farmer, or the producer, and a lot of that time it'll be the farmer and processor, or it'll just be the processor or broker, or wherever you're buying supplies from. It'll be nice when it's just the same as buying it from the local lumber yard. That's the Home Depotification of it all, to where you can just pick up the phone and they're delivering stuff, and you're complaining because it's the afternoon instead of the morning. But all of that stuff will need to be tested. Now, the stuff that comes out of France, they do have that certification that's on it, that they've tested it to a certain criteria. And then, we're working to develop the United States version of that, and just staking a flag in the ground and saying, this is what we want. And that's going to be real necessary for when people do projects, that they have successful projects, because bad stories travel a lot faster than a good story. And so the testing is super key, and then knowing the genetics is super key as well, because if you're growing for fiber and your stalks for like tree trunks, that might shatter. You need to test for that. You need to know, and it might dust up when it's in transport. Those are all those things.
Dust is a huge thing I hear a lot about. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was part of the Formation Ag group. Maybe even Melissa shared it, but it was a great representation of herd that was decorticated coming from, or fiber stock. It was a stock decorticated from a cannabis grow or a CBD stock compared to a fiber stock. And it was showing how those nodes were holding on to pieces of the herd and not actually separating completely.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see, as this progresses and technology progresses and our equipment, advances, where those stocks are processed into those end use applications. And so, there's a lot of discovery to.
Yeah, and all the different varieties are going to find their niche. They're going to find their lane, whether it's, for building, the herd, or for its animal bed, or if it's lost circulation mud, or whatever or plastics, or whatever the case is, they're going to find their niche and their strongest and best suit. And so, but it is a caution. People are watching this and they want to just go get a bag of herd. You got to know that, you got to know what's in there, or your walls are going to fall in. And so, that's important.
Well, and understanding that the standard or specs around that herd, when you mentioned dust, that's critical when you're building wall and the structural piece, or I don't even know if structure is the right word, structural is the right word, but the consistency of the wall so that it maintains its.
Yeah, it's not load bearing, but it is rigid.
Right.
It has to be rigid to hold the plaster and all of that. And then it has to stay in place and not fall in. And then, one of the other things is, how is it packaged? Because it could be dust free at the processing facility. You stick it loosely in a bag, stick it on a tractor trailer, drive 800 miles, and then now it's jostled it up, and now it is dusty. Or things have settled. And so, compression bales, super sacks, this, that, and the other. There's a lot of variables and puzzle pieces. And as people build with it and they know standards, then it'll just be like buying a 2x4. And so that's where we really want to get to where people know what the standard is, know what to look for, and then they can see that certification and go on their way.
Sure. You mentioned earlier your Hemp Builders Network. Am I saying that right? Can you speak a little bit about what's your role, and what are some of the things you guys are focusing on to really advance the projects and involvement?
Yeah, and it's a lot like the connection of, the largest taxi service in the world is Uber, and they don't own a taxi. I'm not out to be a builder for everybody. I'm a builder for myself, and I don't even like doing that. I do enjoy the process and all that, but the thing to know is that if anybody wants to join the network, as an architect, as an engineer, as a subcontractor, as a supplier, they can come to the network and then join, and then the network can have customers that would go to them, and then know that that builder has had a conversation with us, and there's a certain level of basics. And then, and I'll talk about the first three as far as the builder, the architect, and the engineer. Like I said, building with hemp is a pain in the neck at best right now, but there are things that you can do specifically to overcome those difficulties and those challenges. And so a builder doesn't need to know a whole new industry or a way of doing things. They need to know a few basic things, and they need to know where the headaches are going to be, and they're going to have the Advil on the shelf for that day. You got to plan a little bit further ahead. You got to know your different design. Sometimes you order and sequence things a little bit different, but it's not the end of the world. But some of those basic things can really disrupt the apple cart. And uh, if you know those basic things, then you can accommodate for them. Same with architecture design, same with engineering. You don't need to relearn your whole profession. You just need to know a few small things within that profession, and then you can service any customer who wants that. So the worst thing that could happen if a customer wants it, whether it's for health, whether it's the environmental benefit, they want to play a part, they want this type of structure, and then they sit down with an architect and you go, guys, this is really a pain in the neck. Y'all could just do spray foam and get the same kind of R value. And it's like, well, they've negated their conversation and why they're there in the first place. And so we want to have a network that people can sit down. This is local. I'm, the active builder on some right now, but I'm more in the investment business. And so I'm doing things to where I can prototype those types of scenarios and relationships. And, I'm still young enough to do it, but old enough to not want to. And so, especially when it's cold outside and my fingers hurt,
That's right.
I'm not afraid to be a baby on things, but also not afraid to work hard on things. It is fun.
That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned your fund. I want to talk a little bit more about your fund. Can you dive into a little bit about tell me a little bit more detail, how it's working?
Yeah, and Triple P Fund is the first of several funds, and then it's just the cliche is, the money's in the money. Doing whatever it is you fill in the blank with is just something for money to do. And so I'm in the business of cultivating opportunities and scenarios where a profitable math equation is achieved. And then I sell the math equation. And then so if it's processing, if it's building, then those are some of those things. You just create the math equation and sell the math equation. People want a profitable math equation, and they want it backed up with collateral. They want it backed up with data. Money likes boredom. Money that likes exciting stuff, watch out. We've seen those movies where they go to Las Vegas. And so what you need is, those things that are there. And so our saying on there is investing with purpose, on purpose. And so what it does is it empowers investors to make an investment and deploy their capital to something that stewards natural resources, benefits people, and then and creates a profit. Those are the 3 P's: people, profit, and planet. And then if you do just a little bit in the planning phase and the creative phase of, what are we going to do to be profitable, you can accomplish a lot. And I see that very clearly in the design of a house. If you're designing it for a specific purpose, you can do a lot more in that phase than a retrofit. And so that's one of the reasons we're building new as well. I know there's a lot of opportunity to retrofit houses, but we're building new because we can incorporate that design as well. And so the fund is, and it'll be able to do that, and then and have those different scenarios. And so right now we're focused on building houses, which allows people to invest in the hemp industry by investing in real estate. And then so real estate gives it that stability of something to where it's not intellectual property, it's not research and development, it's not venture capital type of stuff. This is more your grandmother's investment. And so, but you're still investing, you're sequestering carbon, you're doing things, and that tick the altruistic boxes that people want to check, but it gives us more stability. Now, if it's a different fund that has more things that are different in their risk, then we'll craft that and create that for such, and then we would make that selective and specific. So that's what Triple P Fund does. It's a family of funds, and then it's cultivating an opportunity. Many of them are in opportunity zones that we're targeting so that we can take some of these tax benefits that are out there that enable people to have that long-term legacy wealth that doesn't have that huge tax burden, so that the investor can really deploy that into doing the right thing instead of it going to the government and then having the government having to come back and then do their best with it. It's something that where it can happen that way.
I love it. I love that. I've always said that there's money in money. And so when explain, really, that's where our opportunity is, because we know so often, and especially I bet you hear it all the time on Clubhouse and in any of the meetings that we host, there are people working their guts out. There are so many intuitive people, right, that are trying to figure out how to move this forward and make a dollar to move it forward. And just keeping in mind these avenues of where money moves and speaking to the investment industries is sometimes very different than, say, the researcher or person that's creating the product themselves.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like to collaborate with people about. Even if I don't do any business or I'm not part of any deal or anything, I really enjoy collaborating with people about how to take their $1 million idea and monetize it. Because a lot of people is like, hey, I've got this $1 million idea. Hey, I can do these things. But it's like, well, you don't just go put a sign in the yard and then sell it. You've got to monetize it, and that might take 10 years. And so monetizing something is a different challenge than having something that's worth monetizing. So you got to get it to the marketplace.
Okay, so I want to give a quick shout out to a few people that are listening. I see Adam's on, and Christopher, Jean, thank you very much for chiming in. Chaz, of course, gave a big shout out to Adam. Thank you guys all for joining. Raphael was on earlier. I hope that you're still there. But if you guys have any last questions before we sum this up, please drop them in the comment. Ray, how do people get in touch with you when we're done here?
Well, the two main points of contact for me are on the two main focuses. The investment side is Triple P Fund, and it's just tripplepfund, all spelled out.com. And then we've got our social media links on there as well. And then there's the Hemp Build Network. That would be more about, joining the network as a builder, an architect, an engineer, or a subcontractor or supplier. They want to join the network, or if they want a consultation about a project that they're building, that's through the Hemp Build Network. And then we've got our social media links on there, and it's hempbuildnetwork.com. Or Clubhouse any Thursday.
Yes, and Clubhouse any Thursday. And Clubhouse, it's not just Ray and Jean and a couple of people. You guys get 100 people I've seen on there at a time listening, and so it's a great way to connect.
Yeah, there's folks from all over the globe that are there, and I'm like, and like I said, it's very humbling. It's like people are logging in, they set their alarm to every Thursday. It's like, hey, this is where we come to collaborate and share ideas. And so it's been fun. We've got a couple guys from Australia, from Europe, from Africa, from you name it. And then, they're in a lot of different time zones. And so it's like, hey, it's 2 a.m. And so it's been fun. But really it's a way to share those ideas and grow them. This February is coming up on a year that we've done it. And it's one of those things to where you can see people that we're talking about a project, and now they're full on into a project, or they're taking their thing to fruition, whatever that thing is, and it's kind of fun to see those things.
And I've got to give
fun fraternal social side of it as well. It's kind of those are my peeps.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which makes it even more fun when we attend events face to face, because then people and building on relationships. And as much of a disconnect as everybody has felt in the beginning of moving to Zoom, I now have more connections and relationships across the world than I would have ever had without it. And now when I go face to face, I already have something to talk about. It's no longer an icebreaker or cold conversation or cold call. It's somebody knows somebody that's connected within our circle. And it's growing pretty quick.
To build a relationship. I remember when I met you the first time, I was like, hey, and it's like, we'd already known each other, but it was nice to meet in person. And so yeah. And then, likewise when folks, they might have been tuning into Clubhouse for for months, and then we get on a phone call, and then it's kind of like, hey, I feel like I know you already, and that's a huge advantage. And yeah, I did not like the zoomy zoom stuff. I'm an eyeball to eyeball person, and but it does have its advantages as far as being able to go down that pathway of cultivating relationships and sharing ideas before you meet in person.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question real quick. And Danielle, great question. What's the biggest obstacles in scaling the industry, Ray? What are your...
Being ready. And then, right now on the small project that I had for Amos, and this is a great illustration of it. I imported that from France, both the binder and the herd. And then that is something that is now, both of those are available domestically. And then so now even the machinery that is used in the mechanical applications, when we go to that route, that was manufactured out of the U.S. and now it is being manufactured in the U.S. And so all of those things about being ready will drive the industry so much when it's not difficult to actually get things on a job site. And so that'll become easier and easier as the network fills out and we have distribution hubs across the country. That'll make it nice. And so we'll be able to do that. But being ready is the biggest thing.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go back to genetics and seeds, obviously, because that's where we're focused and where I see this big need is we bring scale and all of these processors on, making sure we've got a viable source to process. And so figuring out what that is.
Yeah. And on that note, it's one of those things to where something totally unrelated to the building and construction industry will drive the commodity for the building industry. It's like trees, you grow a tree and then that's what you use is the lumber. It's not necessarily a byproduct. The herd is a byproduct of some other fiber processes. And then, that's the example in France where they are the ones where they grow that fiber for automotive parts. And so then they have a mountain of herd. Now, herd is driving the demand in the U.S. And so, I talk to producers who are like, hey, we're good producing herd now, and then we'll backfill with the other. We thought it would be the other, and then backfill with herd. But they're two parts to the plant, and then any one industry, whether it's textile, whether it's automotive, those are the two big candidates that will, and there's a few others that will drive that fiber side or the grain side. To where you have mountains of herd, and then that'll let us really commoditize that on a domestic level. That'll be really nice. And so then the readiness is growing very fast, and so that's very encouraging.
It's exciting. Okay, well, there are a few other comments that have come in, wondering if we've seen a couple of people. Let's see. Have you come across the New York researchers from Rensselaer Polytechnic?
There's a couple of, I don't know if that's them specifically, but I know, I think his name's Ralph is on Clubhouse quite a bit. They're up in New York and they're doing research and development on some products. And I know there's another gentleman up in New York as well. I don't know if that's them. I'd be happy to learn about them and connect.
Awesome. Perfect. And then here's another great question or comment. We have some strong partners in processing, ideally second and final processing on large scale. This is the most cutting edge equipment. We hear that a lot, don't we? And I'm not discrediting cutting edge. The innovation and the speed at which it's advancing is what I'm referencing. It is constantly, we're constantly hearing that. Some of France and China are using, but here in the US, we would love to discuss those contracts as well from farms all over the US would be ready to go. I think, again, this goes back to genetics. We've got to secure genetics and understand what we're growing, where and what for before we're contracting with farmers. And I know that Melissa Nelson has done an incredible job at managing her relationship. Same with John down in Texas. There's a number of people, I'm Rusty, I&E Hemp, there's lots, but have done a fabulous job at managing their relationships with farmers and securing their their offtake agreements and, following through. But it is definitely a slow process and walking before we're running.
Yeah, the three big things that I see there are the genetics, and then the equipment, and then the know-how for taking the genetic to an actual crop, and then taking the crop actually through the processing. And then on all of that, you begin with the offtake, and then you work backwards. And that's what's very important. And the CBD industry taught us that. There was a lot of folks that just saw dollar signs, rushed in, grew, and didn't have a market for it, and then it way overproduced the market. And it's heartbreaking. There's a lot of people made a lot of money, a lot of people lost a lot of money. But if you've got like a large textile company or an industry demand for what you're doing, then you can rest easy knowing that you've got that support. And so those are some of the things that we're trying to connect the dots with you guys and what you're doing, to where those large industry operators that want things that the small fledgling producer and processor wants to produce, and it's kind of like, hey, I need $1 million to see if this works, and then they'll be like, okay, here. And then you can connect those dots for the research and development. But because it's worth, so many billions if it does. And so those are some of the big things that are fun to cultivate and fun to bring to fruition as well. And so kudos to you for all the connections that you make on that. I think that's very valuable to the industry to grow.
Well, I would definitely like to. And I have to give shout out to some comments. I've been reading the comments that are coming in, and I love, just so everybody knows, watching you guys connect. It fuels my fire knowing that something like Clubhouse, or something that GHA has put together, or Ray's group has put together on Clubhouse, brings good connections and business, revenue-minded connections. And so I love seeing this. If you guys need help connecting with additional people or being looped into the network, Ray's got a great team of people, or a great group that can support, as well as GHA. So please feel free to reach out. We can help push things along. So thank you very much. And thank you for all of your comments. Ray, do you have anything you want to add real quick before we sign off?
No, just thanks for having me. And I sure appreciate the time. And again, it's about telling the story specific to the audience. If you're talking to consumers, it's different than if you're talking to engineers, and if you're talking to industrial manufacturers. If we tailor that story with the audience in mind, everybody's going to want to know more, and everybody's going to be in support of it, and then they'll just plug in, and the industry will move forward. So let's all be good storytellers and make some money along the way.
Love it. Daniel, I totally agree. And shout out to Kerr, also over in Europe with Hemp Today. So thank you for mentioning him. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much, you guys. Thank you, Ray, for joining me. I really appreciate you. I'm excited to see you at NOCO. For anybody that isn't going to NOCO, you need to go. We've got some awesome things that we're brewing. And so I'm excited about that. And we'll sign off. We'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, for another great interview. We've got Josh Hendricks coming on. So we'll see you then. Thanks, Ray.